What is the universe teaching me right now? This was my 2022 revelation during not even a meditation, but I feel that simply existing and being in the present is meditation. And yesterday during dinner, I had just simply put my phone down and I was eating. And for the weeks prior, I've been asking myself, what is the universe teaching me? What is the universe trying to teach me? This is something that I ask myself every month or two or so, or genuinely whenever I'm going through something in life where I feel like, there has to be a reason behind this bridge of incidents that is taking me to the manifestation of a brand new outlook or perspective or situation or environmental change in my life. And as I am a Scorpio rising, I'm always going through transformations. I'm always going through changes, but the lessons in between the changes are what matters the most to me. So I always have to take heed to what is the lesson here before I move to the next step in my life. So this was my journal prompt, and this was my revelation to what is the universe teaching me right now. I have been asking myself this question for weeks, pretty much since the year began. I couldn't put my finger on it. It seemed like it was all in my mind, like the problems were invisible, but I could feel them. Well, last night I realized that I had been taught by the universe at this very moment. I've been being taught the law of relativity, which states that the things we're going through is relative to someone else's experiences. And now as I'm reading this journal prompt, I'm also realizing that the someone else is, in my mind, my future self and my past self. That's all we can genuinely relate to. We can't relate to someone outside of ourselves unless we have already experienced what they've experienced. And to have already experienced what someone else has experienced, in order to relate to them, you have to have already gone through it. So I go on to say, each person receives a series of challenges or tests of initiation for the purpose of strengthening the light within themselves. I am slowly but surely learning what the light inside of me is meant to burn for, and where it is supposed to be guiding me and others. These spiritual tests are quiet as kept, but all of us are going through a test daily that teaches us how to proceed into the next path in our lives. When we become aware of how to solve our own problems, the pain we experience is only relative to what we've experienced before. You can only relate to what you've seen or experienced beforehand. Heart connection, or resonance, is a big piece of this lesson too. In order to relate to something, you've got to have an emotional connection to it. I feel that the law of relativity is asking me to be relatable and start only speaking to people who relate to me. Basically, the girls that get it. I guess it helps to take me away from people pleasing completely, because I shouldn't ever step outside of my comfort zone of who I genuinely relate to on a relative level to speak to someone who can't relate to me. So I see that the universe is teaching me to relate to my future self too, because that's the point of learning these lessons and passing these tests anyway. In order to see someone's point of view, you've had to have stood in their position before. What did future me do to solve the perceived problem that I'm experiencing in the now? I feel that I should use this lesson to relate to her, so that I will embody the knowing, the wisdom, and graceful passing of this test, so that I can flow through it with ease like she did. To embody my future self's accomplishment, I have to relate to the feeling of already having accomplished this test. Instead of feeling stuck, I will relate to feeling safe and secure instead of feeling afraid of the unknown. I relate to the immense power I felt the day that things fell into place for me. I relate to pure happiness exciting adventures, enjoyable environments, and comfortability. In order to relate, I must become one with that sense of completion in divine mind. There is only completion. I relate to being in the place of eternal peace, regardless of what I perceive to be happening through the lens of my physical eyes. Unconsciously, I relate to overcoming these tests because I have already consciously done so. Let me reread that. Unconsciously, I relate to overcoming these tests because I already have. Okay. Consciously, I intend to go forward as having already passed the test. So, I relate to completion. And that is love. Period. So, that was the end of the journal prompt that I wrote. And now I'm kind of just going with the motions of feeling in a completed sense of accomplishment. And it's really helping. But it's not all in the mind. Like, everything is mental, yes. But once you get a mental perception of how things look in your completed task, you should create. You should simply create that outside of yourself. You already have the thought of what completion looks like to you. You already have the vision of what it felt like when the task was completed. So for me, my previous task was genuinely focusing on manifesting an apartment. And although the things in my environment did not seem like a stable place for me to be in, to even be thinking about an apartment, because I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the money, I didn't have a lot of things, I said, okay, what does it look like now that I have already accomplished receiving these things? It's just like thinking of the bridge of incidents. Think of what your future self did step by step to get the tools, and what did she do with the tools, and what did the tools, build in those moments that got you and led you up to your manifestation. Because the manifestation itself is simply the accumulation of the tangible physical properties of what once only existed in your imagination. So to manifest something is to simply just bring it out of your imagination. So imagine when you say I am, you are essentially saying that imaginative being. The I in I am is to me, it stands for imagination. And the am, the word am, is to be. When you are something, you are being something. So when you say the affirmation of I am, you imagine being, because you can only perceive yourself to be what you think you are. You have to start at the mind. So the source of everything that you see outside of you starts in your mind. Everything that you perceive outside of yourself started in your imagination. You had to imagine what things outside of you were so that you could perceive them in ways that made sense to you. So that's just where I am right now. I'm preaching. I'm very much in this state of just feeling it real over and over and over again, to the point where I don't have to, strain myself to say, think about it this way, think about it that way. Like, no, you don't have to think so much when you embody the emotion of just knowing. And when you know something to be true, you know something to be a fact to the point where you believe it with every fiber in your body, that is what makes it real. That is what creates the manifestation. Jesus. I'm up here punching the journal because I'm just like, It gets better with time. And even time is a concept that only exists in the mind. So therefore, it doesn't even fucking matter. Like, I apologize for cursing. That's not even how I talk. I do talk like that. I'm just very much like, okay, it's not hard at all. But when you're so used to knowing things, not because you knew it beforehand, but because you just know because you know. And sometimes that it's in itself is the answer. Because you just know. That is the art of intuition. And when you get in tune with your intuition, you just know things. And you don't have to question yourself. You don't have to go back on your word because you just know. So that is my homework for the rest of the week until I get across the bridge of incidents that bring me to my next manifestation. And then I'll talk about that in my next journal prompt. But for now, answering the question of what is the universe teaching me right now is to relate. It is to relate to my future self and having already completed the task and embodying the emotions of completion and accomplishment and happiness and fulfilledness. To be fulfilled right now, to feel accomplished right now, to feel proud of myself right now, to feel free, to feel embodied with an immense amount of love right now. And that's just that. So I came across a TikTok of a girl reading a random page in a book that the page or the chapter is titled Creating Money. This is actually from Kiara Nicole on TikTok, and she's reading a book. I don't know what the name of the book is, but the name of the chapter is called Creating Money. And this heavily relates to my prior talk to myself about just being and just feeling the feel of completion. And I just wanted to read this little excerpt from the book that I can see. Because on TikToks, like, they're flashing a whole bunch of shit across the screen in one compilation video. So it says, if you are exerting too much energy, it will feel like a strain. If you must constantly remind yourself to think about something you want and work on it, if magnetizing feels like a struggle and you are constantly putting out a tremendous amount of energy for just a little or no result, you are putting out too much magnetic intensity. If you have to apply too much power, you are probably going outside the current of your higher path. If when you think of something, you can almost feel it coming, you are using the right amount of energy. If you use too small amount, it will not come to you at all, or it may take a long amount of time to come. You can know if you are exerting too small an amount of energy because what you want will seem far away. It will seem like a wish more than a certainty. And the caption of this TikTok is covering the rest of the words. But, bitch, I want to read this book. But that little excerpt is all I needed to see clearly because I resonate with that. So earlier I was going on a little tangent about how I felt a little frustrated. I got a little frustrated while talking about like just being in the now and feeling the feeling of accomplishment, but it almost felt like a faraway thing. So it's just a little, I was thankful to come across this little excerpt in the book that she's also reading because we're kind of all on the same wavelength, it seems. And, the people who come up on your For You page are just people who are like existing on the same wavelength or timeline as you in a sense. And, however that goes in life. So that was really, really nice. And I'm just going to take that thought with me as I go along with just embodying the sense of completion and not really forcing the energy to be anything other than the feeling of gratitude, the feeling of completion, the feeling of accomplishment, and just flow from there. Like there's no energy that I have to, or no excess amount of energy that I have to put out. Just being me right now is the energy. That's it. Like, yeah. Okay. Amen.